What Reddit post Oz comment can you still not get over? Story 1. The guy whose M's were all capital in his comments, and who explained that his M key was broken, so he just kept one perpetually copied on his clipboard and pasted it when required. He also said he'd use a lowercase one in special occasions, but didn't consider Reddit comments to be worth the trouble. Story 2. This guy said he was going for a routine physical with his doctor, and I don't remember how, but he ended up breaking his neck and posted a picture of himself with a neck brace on in the hospital. Someone commented, "You failed the out of your physical." I laugh so hard every time I think about it. Story 3. Not super crazy, but the one where a girl's boyfriend kept telling her she smelled bad every day, even though she was clean and showered daily. She finally asked him why he kept saying it, and his response was that his father taught him to do that as a way to keep someone in the A relationship. The reasoning was because it makes them feel like no one else would want them. That level of manipulation really messed with me. Thankfully, she broke up with him. But seriously, WTF. Story 4. This one from 6 years ago. Credit to you, Wazoheat. Sorry, buddy. Been a long time, though. Question. Seeing as how Jupiter's a gas giant, what would happen if we were to step foot on it? Would we fall to the center? Answer. Well, if you weren't wearing a spacesuit, no matter where you started, you would die almost instantly because there is essentially no oxygen at any level of Jupiter's atmosphere. But let's say you do have a spacesuit. What do you mean by step foot on it? Jupiter is, as you noted in your question, a gas giant, meaning it's made of gas. There is no solid surface, and just like Earth's atmosphere, the gas doesn't really have a top. It just gets thinner and thinner as you get further and further from the planet, until at some point it is indistinguishable from interplanetary space, which you may be interested to know is not a true vacuum. But let's say you just get dropped from some height way outside of Jupiter's visible atmosphere. Once you got within about 200,000 miles, about 300,000 kilometers of the planet's surface, you die fairly quickly from radiation poisoning. But let's say your spacesuit has radiation-resisting superpowers. Well, due to Jupiter's extreme mass, you'd quickly accelerate through the tenuous upper atmosphere at about 2.6 g and burn up just like a meteor flying through Earth's upper atmosphere. But let's say we dropped you in the middle of Jupiter's upper atmosphere, where the pressure were just about the same as Earth's surface pressure, 1 bar. Now we're getting somewhere. You'd be falling, but since you're already in the thicker part of the atmosphere, your terminal velocity will be fairly low, taking Jupiter's higher gravity and the atmosphere's lower density into account. It is mostly hydrogen, so its density is about 10 times less than Earth's, even though the pressure is similar. Your terminal velocity would be about 3,200 kilometers per h, 2,000 miles per hour. This is probably slow enough that frictional heating and heating from supersonic compression would not burn you up. But hell, for S and giggles, and in the name of keeping you alive as long as possible, let's give you a parachute, a little smaller than the one given to the Galileo probe, so that you fall at about the same velocity initially, approximately 100 ms or about 360 kilometers per h, 220 miles per hour. Now we're cooking. Not literally, though, because the temperature at this level is fairly comfortable. The temperature is just about 0 C, 32 F, so you'd actually be pretty comfy. So, okay, now you're in your radiation-proof spacesuit with your handy parachute, falling through the atmosphere just at the top of the clouds. These clouds are made of ammonia, but let's just assume your spacesuit and parachute are okay with that. You'd actually be okay for quite a while, maybe a little bored, but hey, you're on Jupiter. Story 5. The guy who wanted legal advice on how to get his son's biomom visitation custody hours, even though A, she was upfront that she didn't want the baby. B, he basically forced her to go through with the pregnancy in hopes that she's changed her mind. C, she signed her rights away. D, she pays more than the required amount of child support. You can imagine how roasted he got by everyone. My still favorite Reddit comment of all time is just someone ripping apart his argument line by line, then ending it with a literal U. Story 6. When OP was a kid, he makes a mustard sandwich, is told to share with another kid. Kid shares sandwich, but since there is no meat in the sandwich, that must mean the OP must have stolen the meat before he shared the sandwich. Cue the adults calling the OP a thief. The OP tries to say, "I didn't steal any meat because there was no meat in the first place," but the adults think the kid is now lying. Imagine, due to some misunderstanding, authority figures think you did something very bad, not even murder or assault, although stealing is a very bad thing to do, even though you 100% did not do the bad thing. And every time you maintain your innocence, they think you are lying. That's a horrifying experience. Story 7. The guy who coerced his ex into keeping a pregnancy she didn't want agreed to let her sign away her visitation and custody rights and just pay child support and not be involved at all because he wanted the baby so badly. Then was shocked Pikachu face when she did indeed just walk away after the kid was born and make regular child support payments. He wanted to find a way to force her to have some visitation and custody at that point. I still kind of hope it was fake, but it stuck in my brain regardless. Story 8. There was a post in a subreddit for locals here that actually left sleepless for a while. Someone mentioned a painful scream one night and which street/area it was. That person said the scream was so shattering that they woke up but couldn't see anything outside. The answer from other locals was that the children's hospital is very close and sometimes parents come out screaming like that. It broke my heart. Story 9. The one where a guy's parents missed his wedding because his sister's dog was sick. This had been after a lifetime of missing his events because of the sister. So the best man decided to give him the best gift by taking videos and pictures of the wedding to turn it into one video and using the parents' voicemail as the audio. He put it out on social media and basically exposed the parents. The family obviously asked OP to take it down, but he never did. His dad even called him saying they would make it up to him. Never knew what happened after that. Story 10. I scrolled down a lot and couldn't find it, so I'll mention the story about the man who was playing while wearing headphones, and when he went downstairs he found someone had broken and entered and was raping his wife and threatening to kill her daughter if she did anything. It had been going on for a while and he never realized because he was wearing headphones. That lives rent-free in my mind, and I wear headphones way less often now. Story 11. It was a best of probably fake, but damn so well written it really broke my heart. The story was about a young woman who spent her life raising and taking care of her handicapped sister because her parents were basically narc a-holes. It was during COVID that she finally could move out with her sister. When her mom remembered she had kids and wanted to see her sister, she warned her about how her sister has basically no immune system or so, and her mom should wear a mask and stuff, which she didn't. Her sister got infected and died, and she blamed it all on herself because she didn't took enough care and failed. The last sentence was something about it's Christmas, her sister's favorite day of the year. She just wants to kill herself, but thinks she doesn't deserve the end of suffering. The whole perspective and always just blaming herself for what her parents effed up. Damn, that got me and the poor sister. Like the only love story I ever believed in the love. Story 12. There was a post by a guy who had severe anxiety and asked for advice about going to Starbucks. Instead of mocking or making jokes, hundreds of people wrote out detailed step-by-step instructions and what to expect, sharing the options so he could plan it out before he went. The internet can be a really ugly place, reflecting the absolute worst of humanity in parts. But Reddit feels like this innocent corner of the internet where some truly beautiful human interactions take place. It gives me hope for humanity. Story 13. It was a post I made a couple years ago that really taught me about human nature. I made the statement, humans are all born as equals until society starts labeling us. About 2,000 people responded in disagreement. They were hung up on where, how, when people were born because these are all things that impact societal labels. People cannot get over societal labels. People apparently really do think that someone is better if they are born rich or born in a better part of the world. These societal labels impact a person's situation for sure, but that person isn't better worse than you the moment they are born. The ego of people is always pushing a hierarchy. The ego will not let go of this imaginary hierarchy. People are constantly asking themselves where they are in the hierarchy in response to the person standing next to them. So petty. Story 14. The woman whose daughter was allergic to coconut and her mom, baby's grandmother, refused to take it seriously. Grandma put coconut oil in her hair, gave her Benadryl when she started reacting, and put her to bed. The baby died. Her twin sister now has a void in her soul. The last thing Mom said to Grandma was, "You can visit when you bring my daughter with you." Story 50. The woman who bought a DNA ancestry kit for her dad as a gift. Dad takes it, finds out none of his 3 children are his, and that his wife was having a years-long affair with a family friend. Dad disappears after all this comes out. They find his body 3 days later at the family cabin after he hung himself. The poor woman was consumed by guilt for buying the DNA ancestry kit. I think about that post and that poor woman whenever I hear people buying those kits for Christmas gifts for the whole family. Story 16. There are a few that come to mind of mothers saying they wish they never had their severely mentally disabled child, that it ruined their marriage, destroyed friendships, ruined their life, and how they wish the child would just die so they can have a normal life again. Kids who are violent, scream for hours, destroy the house, beat the parents, smear on the walls, can't speak, can't think, etc. I can't imagine a worse hell. Story 17. About how a kid dropped a $1 cheeseburger and asked his mom for a replacement. The mom cleaned it up by dusting of the dirt and gave it back to the kid saying it was their collective last dollar and wasn't sure about when their next meal was going to be. Can't get over it because the mom spent the last dollar they had on the kid. I know most parents would do this. Seemed like she was trying her best when things were going downhill for them. Sometimes I wish I could unread a comment. The imagery makes me feel uneasy when I think about it. Story 18. Okay, this has been driving me insane. A Redditor claimed being like a vampire who's lived thousands of years and lives in the middle of the PNW who hunts humans and had a cookbook called Creatures Cookbook. He talked about stalking his prey. Had zero emotion, and no, it wasn't a Twilight spoof. It was a fascinating read. He claimed to study mankind through the years. I'm sure it was fictitious, but I'd love to find it. Story 19. A really old post, so the details are a bit foggy. The guy who was in a coma and experienced a whole separate life from his real life while being in a coma. He had a wife and family while in the coma. Woke up to realize it was all his imagination. He got a bit depressed afterwards and deeply missed his coma family. Story 20. Someone posted how they were sitting and drinking with their dad and stepmother and just joking around. In the course of their conversation, it came up that, for as long as anyone could remember, the stepmom never took showers. She only ever took baths. So the commenter and their dad sort of ribbed on stepmom about it. And when the commenter asked why she always took baths and never showers, the stepmom flatly replied it was because she couldn't stand the blast of ice-cold water that comes out of the shower when you turn it on. Both the commenter and their father started giggling because they thought she was having them on. When the stepmom asked why they thought it was so funny, the commenter said, "Why don't you just turn on the shower from outside and let it run a few minutes before getting it?" The look on the stepmom's face caused the commenter and their dad to burst out laughing because it was obvious that the stepmom, in all of her life, somehow never once considered doing that. I have no idea why this story stuck in my head, but I shower every single day before I head to work. And pretty much every time I get in, after I start the shower and let it run for a minute or two, I always think of that comment. Story 21. I saw a post a few months ago in AITA about a guy who got pissed off at his girlfriend over something really small. So while she was asleep, he took every single plant out of her plant room, loaded them into his truck, drove them to a pond, and drowned them, including a plant from her deceased grandma. He then went on to say he regrets it and wasn't thinking, and it was the heat of the moment. But she was completely broken by this. The room was empty. She was empty. Her heart was broken over her grandma's plant. She even asked him, even her plant, and the comments lit him up, talking about how it wasn't the heat of the moment, and he planned this out because he was jealous she spent more time caring for the plants than him. It still makes me sick when I think about it. Story 22. The one where this woman who worked for a company for several years always thought she either was forgetful or going through mental issues because she would work on a project and save it, only for it to disappear from her desktop. Her mental health suffered. She got reprimanded at work. Found out that a man from IT, who she had rejected for a date years ago, was remotely logging in and deliberately doing this to her. Her work told her after he was fired. She was asking what legal recourse she had, and it seemed like she didn't have many options to litigate. It was so frustrating to read. Story 23. A few months back, there was a post on RAITA where OP was asking if she was the asshole for telling her boyfriend off after he attempted to give financial advice that included cutting back on basic necessities, such as food and using less water. OP would explain that she works a 9-5 to support her family and could barely make ends meet for herself. Meanwhile, the boyfriend is a student at a prestigious Ivy League college where he works a part-time job. From the get-go, you can clearly tell that OP was jealous of her boyfriend's position, especially considering that he doesn't need to support his own family. However, that seems pretty understandable, and the comments would mostly take her side. That is until the boyfriend mentioned in the post actually leaves a comment painting a much clearer picture of what is going on here. One detail that he would highlight that OP conveniently forgot to mention was that the reason why he doesn't have to worry about supporting his family is because he doesn't have a family. He's a foster kid. OP would actually reply to his comment defending herself, and IUNOT attempted to make the argument that him having no parents actually served as a benefit, again, benefit to him because he didn't have to support his family. Needless to say, everyone turned against her for that. I do hope that OP's boyfriend is doing well and has broken up with that toxic hellspawn that was his girlfriend. He should take pride in knowing that he made it to where he is now, especially considering most people in his predicament don't make it to college at all, let alone an Ivy League. Edit. Grammatical errors. Story 24. Do y'all remember that one post where this woman was with a man who didn't believe in marriage, but they had 2 kids together and were practically married? One day, he left her when he found out his real wife woke up from a coma, and his whole family supported him. It was deleted, but I still wonder about her. I'm not doing the storytelling justice LOL on mobile. Story 25. There was a post on relationship advice about a Waipung man in his 20s whose mother and father divorced when he was very young. His mother cheated on the father with the father's best friend, he was best man at their wedding, and ended up leaving the father and marrying ex-best man in the span of a few months. The young man was one of 4 siblings, and his twin sister was slowly corrupted by the mother to turn against her father to the point where she changed her career path to follow ex-best man, law, over her father, who was a surgeon. When she married, she chose ex-best man to walk her down the aisle and expected her father to suck it up and get over it, because it seems like he always had in prior instances. This time, he did not. He stopped talking to his daughter and died a few years later from pancreatic cancer. Even on his deathbed, he refused to reconcile with his daughter. When he died, he was very wealthy. All his kids, including the daughter, received equal material monetary parts of his estate. However, each of his children except the daughter received a hand-bound photograph album of pictures the father had been taking and saving throughout their childhoods and left detailed notes behind each photo. He also left these 3 children each a long farewell letter that OP refused to share but was obviously of immense value. When the spurning daughter learned about this, she had a mental breakdown requiring hospitalization. I'll never forget how OP described her as beginning to improve, but still prone to randomly breaking out into hysterical sobbing/hyperventilating fits. Story 26. A post on Am I the Asshole by a woman who had a collection of fun socks with weird designs and patterns, one she described as have Nicolas Cage on them. Her boyfriend absolutely hated them with the burning passion of 1,000 suns. So one day when she was gone, he threw out all of them and replaced them with plain black socks. I just can't imagine being that angry over someone's socks. Story 27, that video where the guys get trapped inside a tornado and all the commenters can say is how it was wrong for that one guy to be screaming. If somebody thinks they are about to die, especially if they are not trained emergency personnel, I don't think we should hold them to the standards of the prefrontal cortex when it's clearly the amygdala overriding it. It is an established scientific fact that the amygdala shut down the prefrontal cortex in times of panic. Those same people complaining about the guys screaming are probably the ones who defend cops when they strangle some guy over selling a loose cigarette. Story 28. I swear it will always stick out to me. A post from a guy talking about how him and his fiancée got into a bit of a heated discussion, and she wanted to diffuse the situation by taking a breather for the night about it, but he saw it as her avoiding the topic and pushed and pushed and pushed until she got actually worked up and had to take that breather. So he got drunk, pulled his truck up to her beloved greenhouse plant shed, and took every single plant, self-described to be upwards of 100 or more of them. He took them all into the bed of the truck, drove it to the nearby pond, and pitched everyone into the pond, including the heirloom orchid that her great-grandmother immigrated with. He was posting, asking for advice on how to make it right, but the post stunk, like he wasn't actually sorry he did it. He was just sorry that he was getting the cold shoulder from his fiancée over some stupid mistake, haha, and he wanted his benefits back, like getting his coffee tea made in the morning for him. Story 29. A couple of years ago, a guy posted, forgot the sub, about how he wanted to release a tiger from its cage at his local zoo. We were rooting for him. Go for it, dude, that kind of thing. Well, he went and did it. It was on the news. On February 21st, 2022, Matthew Abraham, 24, of Worcester, Massachusetts, was arrested for attempting to enter the tiger enclosure at Boston's Franklin Park Zoo. On February 21st, 2022, Matthew Abraham, 24, of Worcester, Massachusetts, was arrested for attempting to enter the tiger enclosure at Boston's Franklin Park Zoo. What happened? Abraham was spotted by zoo staff in a non-public area at around 8:45 a.m., and detained by security at around 9 a.m. He climbed over a gate, scaled multiple fences, and ignored posted signs. Abraham was not harmed and did not make it into the enclosure. I feel bad that we encouraged him. Story 30. There was an Ask Reddit about 12 years ago. It was something along the lines of, what's something you don't want to do but always do? A Redditor commented, after a long day of work and all they want to sit down to decompress, their dog will bring a ball or a toy to them. Even though they just want to relax, they'll always play because they know they'll miss the playtime one day. That stuck with me. I got a dog a couple months later, and she just turned 11 in April. I play as much as I can, and she's still youthful. Just always remember to appreciate your time shared with the ones you love. Story 31. A guy asked a legal question in a not legal related subreddit. I said it depended on where they were because, laws can change depending on your location. Somebody responded to me very assuredly and aggressively that not only was OP in the right, but that the cops were going to jump to their feet and immediately help this person for being the victim of a crime. Mind you, the crime was pretty minor to start with. Honestly, it wouldn't have been too bad except they got a bunch of upvotes and I got downvoted, so I immediately left that sub forever. Story 32. I cannot remember the sub I read it in, but someone had posted, I believe, a New York Times, it may have been another publication, article about a woman who had a baby and mistreated her cat on purpose afterwards. One of the lines in the article was that the person saw paw prints on the toilet seat because the cat was trying to drink out of the toilet due to the owner not giving it water, and she was hardly feeding it. I'm not doing a great job at giving a description of the article, but the impact it left was massive, and I felt physically sick after reading it. It even made me cry. I think about this article often. I think about the cat and what became of it. I just hope it's in a new home getting the love and care it deserves. Story 33. It's not really a comment, but this girl, 20-something, made an AI post of messing up with a guy's feelings knowing fully well he was into her. The guy obviously was hurt, and she got annoyed with him after he pulled back from her following that incident. Her post was trashed, and at some point she made another post titled, "I posted something on AI, and people have been downvoting me no matter what I post or comment. It's funny they think I care," to which she then proceeds to rant how much she doesn't care, replying to every comment how much she doesn't care. Much. Troll or not, that girl was a piece of work. Story 34. I love those famous Reddit stories about bedbugs or carbon monoxide where people don't realize it's them doing the weird stuff around their house in a sleep, oxygen-deprived state. A few months ago in a small mobile game subreddit, someone made a post about their account getting hacked. According to OP, someone was logging onto his game in the middle of the night, doing some missions, but not claiming the rewards, and the logging out. No credit card usage, no information access, just playing and doing normal daily monotomy. No one else had access to the phone. OP lived alone, so definitely weird. I mentioned those stories and asked if they knew how to check for bugs, had a carbon monoxide detector, or just started a new medication. But after replying to every other comment, OP deleted their entire Reddit account a few minutes after I made mine. It is possible they were just getting hacked or messed with by a friend, but I choose to believe it was like one of those famous Reddit stories, and OP didn't want to let the world know they had just started a new sleeping med. Not exactly what OP was looking for, but I think about that post a few times a month. I hope they are okay. Story 35. The stupid Indian student who conned his way into Lehigh University and got caught because he decided to brag about it in great detail here, getting himself expelled and deported. I'm still cracking TF up about the stupidity, but I genuinely feel awful for international students who study abroad in the United States who may have an even more difficult time receiving admission to a USA university because of this scammer. For all the effort he put into defrauding the university and stealing college benefits, he could have easily just put that into doing the actual work to get a degree. Cheers. Story 36. I can't remember where it was posted, some confession subreddit, but I very often think about the post where this woman was married to a guy for over 10 years, I believe, and how she almost never saw his best friend, another guy, when they supposedly hung out quite often. Then the wife and best friend meet at a party, and the best friend seems nervous. Wife then says to husband that he doesn't like her. Several months later, husband and best friend are on a guy's trip, and wife is having a girls' party at her house, and wife sees one of the girlfriends looking at an Instagram account that she's never seen before, and it's her husband and best friend looking like a couple. I can't really remember what made her think anything of it. And she goes to look through the IG account, and it's filled with pics of the husband and best friend being a couple. They had been in a relationship their entire marriage, and everybody else knew it, but the wife and the best friend felt incredibly guilty, and that's why he almost never interacted with the wife. Story 37. About 2 years ago on the medical school subreddit, a post showed up that a med student in Australia put his mouth on a standardized patient's titty during a practice physical exam. FYI, standardized patients are actors who have been hired for med students to practice their history and physical skills. The student apparently had been practicing with his GF at home and did stuff like that to goof around, then had a complete brain fart and did it during the real thing. Last I heard, he got suspended or expelled. Story 38. This one made me tear up just by reading. He always felt the tension between his parents, their love fading into something distant. Then one day, when he was just 10, his mom packed up everything while his dad was at work. Furniture, clothes, dishes, leaving him behind. He remembered clinging to her leg, begging her to stay or at least take him with her, but it was no use. In the chaos, he called his dad, who couldn't leave work right away. "Lock the doors and stay safe," he said. After hanging up, the boy felt lost and decided to make one of the panini sandwiches his dad often prepared for him. He rummaged through the kitchen, finding only a paper plate, and sat on the front stoop, staring at the sandwich as the hours passed. When his dad finally got home, he was taken aback by the empty house. The boy held out the plate, saying, "I made this for you." His dad took it, sitting beside him, and they shared the sandwich in silence. He could see the tears welling in his father's eyes, but he chose to pretend not to notice, wanting to be strong for them both in that moment. Story 39. The one from a person who had become quadriplegic after a car accident. Low, incorrect air pressure on his tires combined with, I believe, rainy conditions, or some other factor, flipped his car, became paralyzed. He said he was extremely depressed because his whole life changed and none of his friends talked to him anymore because it was not the same or weird. "I freak out every time my air pressure light comes on because of that post." Story 40. A woman posted complaining that her husband blows his nose in the shower, and she had to spend a considerable effort scraping dried snot off the shower walls. I and several others were trying to tell her that we often blow our nose in the shower and it rinses right down the drain and have never had to scrape dried snot off the wall, but she didn't believe us. I wonder what the heck her husband was doing for it to stick on the walls like that. Story 41. A few years ago, on the Off My Chest subreddit, I read a post by a man that was incredibly heartbreaking. Long story short, he and his wife never wanted children. When his sister-in-law died suddenly, his wife became obsessed with having a child. She and her parents lobbied him. His in-laws promised to co-parent since he was so against it. His wife gave birth to a boy. That boy ended up having oppositional defiance disorder. He was writing the post from his car in the parking lot of a big box store. His 12-year-old son had just urinated on the doorknob of the neighbor's front door. Before that, his son had urinated all over a box of the only surviving mementos from the poster's long-dead immediate family. Anything of value was pissed or on by this kid, or destroyed. The thing that hit me hardest about that post is that in 12 years, his in-laws had and provided respite for their daughter and son-in-law exactly twice. In the comments, people with male relatives diagnosed with ODD said, "Hey, brace yourself and let go now. He's going to end up in prison. He's going to hurt people." Story 42. I think this was from a "what's the scariest thing that has ever happened to you" type thread. Guy was driving through an unfamiliar rural area and he comes upon someone laying in the road. Something felt off, so he drives around the person and a little farther down the road. And when he looks back, the person in the road is sitting up and multiple people have come up onto the road from out of the cornfield or forest, I can't remember, and are staring at him. Story 43. I think this was from a "what's the scariest thing that has ever happened to you" type thread. Guy was driving through an unfamiliar rural area and he comes upon someone laying in the road. Something felt off, so he drives around the person and a little farther down the road. And when he looks back, the person in the road is sitting up and multiple people have come up onto the road from out of the cornfield or forest, I can't remember, and are staring at him. Story 44. I think about this all the time. I think it was on a weather or cloud subreddit. The video was of these really strange-looking clouds on a beach. They looked like a sinking ceiling, basically, like a ceiling full of water, just these humps of clouds. The post was asking what kind of clouds they were. My hero replied, "Those look like get-off-the-beach clouds." Never have I laughed harder at a Reddit comment than I did that day. Story 45. A story from a guy who had a lovely wife with whom he'd spend years, children, pretty decent job, and overall, a pretty good life. One day, something bugged him about a lamp in their living room. He just sat there and stared at the lamp for hours. It was just weird. Something strange about the dimensions making it look unreal. He then woke up with paramedics attending to him. I don't quite remember how, but he got hit in the head and became unconscious. His whole life afterwards, including wife, children, job, never happened, and he was just a teenager with a head injury. Story 46. To paraphrase the comment, this solution can work for an individual, but it can't fix the problem for the entire population. And that comment is so applicable to a ton of different things. That comment really got me thinking about a lot of proposed solutions to problems. I don't recall if I upvoted that comment, but I hope I did because it's probably the most profound comment I've read here. I think the initial comment was in response to someone recommending a person not remain in a low-paying job when they were struggling to make ends meet, though I could be wildly off. Story 47. The OP who posted her fiancé left her for the one that got away. Few months before their wedding, his ex-girlfriend moved back to town. He met up with her, then changed and got distant with OP. Later, she returned to their apartment after hanging out with his grandmother, only to find him packing his things and leaving her for his ex. After OP went through the pick-me attempts, she finally decided to call off the wedding, cancel everything. Some weeks passed. Ex-fiancé tries to contact OP back, saying he had made a mistake, he got cold feet, etc. She told him never to contact her again, blocked him, yet he came to OP apartment with his GF in tow twice. But OP never answered the door. That's where it ended. Always wondered what happened. Did she confront him? Did she ever take him back? Are they married? Or did she stick with her decision and stayed the "it's over, we're never getting back together" course? Story 48. There's an old story by a guy who wanted to ask the lady he lived with and took care of his kids to marry him. His wife's best friend was leaving an abusive relationship and his wife was sick after giving birth to their daughter, so they asked her friend to come stay with them and help out with the baby. Long story short, the wife passes, and the guy tells her that she's welcome to stay and help take care of her goddaughter. It's maybe the best romantic story I've ever read. They were both completely uninterested in dating for obvious reasons. But after like 4 years, it suddenly hit him that he's in love with this lady that lives in his house. He was so uncertain about continuing the relationship, and Reddit was talking him through his feelings. Story 49, the guy who claimed womansplaining is a thing, and proceeded to recount the EST examples he could list. For those who haven't seen, he got mad because a girl at a party with him told him that it is a bad idea to try and put pizzas in a hot oven with a plate and baking paper. It's confusing literally reading the post now, and it's hard to follow. He then proceeded to write a paragraph rant being upset that women tell him stuff that he is doing is dangerous. Story 50. The mother who had young twins, one of which was allergic to coconut. It had taken a couple years to figure out what she was reacting to. One evening, she left the twins and her young son with her mother, who knew of the allergy. And the mother put coconut oil in the daughter's hair, then put her in the crib for the night, which she didn't make it through. Her brother found her, completely blown up like a balloon, foaming from the mouth. The parents came home to their son running from the neighbor's house, inconsolable, and found out they no longer had twins or 3 children. Story 51. A 14-year-old boy made a post where he said there were people living in his walls who followed him in between houses, and he could hear them saying things about him. A lot of Redditors didn't believe him, so he decided to provide a video of them speaking to prove it. The video was about a minute long of this kid just recording a wall. It was silent. There were no voices. The comments immediately shifted to worrying about him and urging him to get screened for psychosis. I haven't found that post or that account in a while, but assuming it's real, I hope that kid is okay. Story 52. I need some help with this one. If anyone remembers, would be grateful to find it again. It was a response to the worst thing you've seen type topic, paraphrasing. Someone wrote the most detailed, eloquent, dark, and dismal account of a horrific experience I've ever read. It was him and his uncle, clearing out an attic. Uncle was repairing an old lathe, and it started up. The descriptions following that were sickening. Ultimately, the uncle begged with his eyes for the OP to put him out of his misery, and OP couldn't bring himself to do it. I haven't been able to get that share out of my head. I would like to revisit it because I'm a morbid one, but also appreciated his way with words. Story 53. I could not stop laughing at a guy's comment a couple weeks ago. The question was something along the lines of, what bizarre encounter have you had with a stranger? He said he was at a casino playing slots with his wife, and some guy came up and kept asking about his hair and complimenting it, asking if he could touch it and was it real if he could have it. He said she's never had a compliment on his hair before or since, and his hair was like wispy and thin. It was the hardest I've laughed in a long time. Story 54, I've got 2. The first one is an Ask Reddit post like, doctors, what's the saddest story you have? Or something along those lines. One of the comments was about a man who came in because of a pounding headache and was told he had a brain tumor and about 2 weeks to live. He started tearing up and told them that he was supposed to get married in 2 weeks. Well, the nurses set up a minister to come to the hospital the next morning, and he and his fiancée got married. The last line was, he died 2 weeks later, married to the love of his life. That still gets me. I think about him and his poor wife quite often. Since that day, I've thought about how I couldn't stand passing without being married to my man. The second was a comment on, I think, a R grief post. This woman's fiancé died suddenly and it was her pouring her heart out. But the line that really stuck with me was her saying, I really wanted to be his wife. As someone who works in a somewhat dangerous job, with my boyfriend in the same field and often doing much more dangerous activities, it just tore me apart to think of the pain she was going through. I can't imagine how strong you'd have to be to keep living after something like that because I know I wouldn't be able to. Story 55. The one where the guy thought his wife was cheating, I think during Thanksgiving, and followed them to a hotel. It was this big saga for a couple days. And the one where some guy made his GF have a baby she didn't want and agreed she would give up custody to him and pay 150% childcare. Then he was pissed she wouldn't take the kid, and he needed a break, because childcare was hard. Story 56. The post from a woman who had went to therapy for her social media addiction that led to her husband leaving with the kids. He gave up wait for her to get off her phone to do the most basic things. Her tried gaslighting him to think he didn't live her because he never took photos of her. He scrolled through his camera, and in every one her head was in her phone, even at special events. Last straw for husband was her asked for a special meal. Husband already had dinner planned, but went shopping, made the meal, and she went to the bathroom for an hour. He left there and then. Her therapist recommended writing about her story as a therapy tool and technique, and she posted it to Reddit, got ripped to shreds. Story 57. Rant post about taco shells from a particular grocery store always being stale. OP was not following the instructions and had been eating the tacos for years without heating them up first. Comments were pictures of other uncooked food items like bread captioned, "Help, why is my toast soft?" and frozen chips like, "Why are my chips cold and wet?" My partner and I quote this post to each other constantly when cooking. Pretty insignificant post, but it has become such a great running joke in my relationship. Story 58. It was on relationship advice about 4 years ago. This guy bought a house with his fiancée, wife, can't remember which, and after they moved in, she didn't let him go upstairs, like, at all. She claimed it as her part of the house and he wasn't allowed up there. He slept downstairs, she slept upstairs. When he tried to go upstairs, she would get upset, so he just never went upstairs. People tried to tell him to just go upstairs. He got mad. There haven't been any updates. I still wonder if he ever went upstairs. Story 59. There was a particular comment, and unfortunately, I'm unable to recollect the subreddit and any other details. This comment talks about a person who started a new life in a different place, possible different continent, after getting involved in some financial issues. Can't recollect if he owed the money or not. Sounded like he was the good guy and the other's villain. So many people consoled him for his brave decision, and most of them were supporting him. I want to read it once again, too. Please comment the link if anybody knows this. Story 60. The guy who posted asking what the fastest way to earn 100K or something like that in a few days' time claimed he owed money to some loan shark, I think it was. No one in the comments believed him. His last post was a picture of a group of guys walking up the street to his house at night, ready to do whatever it was they were going to do to get their money. The guy never posted again after that. Story 61. The guy who spent his whole life sitting directly on the porcelain rim of toilet bowl every time he took a dump instead of using a toilet seat because he thought that men weren't supposed to use toilet seats, and only discovered this error one day when we went to buy a new toilet, and the salesperson was perplexed when he told him that he wasn't going to need a seat because he was a man and lived alone. Story 62. Okay, this was not that long ago, but I'm just sad there wasn't a resolution. This girl posted that a friend of hers had set her up on a date with a friend of theirs. When she met up with the guy, the friend had sent him different pics of the girl, as in not pics of her at all, pics of someone thinner and much different looking than her. They had the date anyhow, and it went well. A day or so later, she saw the friend and a mutual friend of theirs. One of them asked how the date went. When she said great, the mutual friend lost it, and the friend acted like the girl had done something horribly wrong. The last update was she was going to meet with the guy and talk about it, and then she deleted the post. I feel like there was tea that was not what we were expecting that we'll never know. Story 63. There was a lady on Aida who was concerned because her fiancé got her a cheap engagement ring even though he's minted. I didn't see the original post, so I'm not sure how people reacted, but I do remember her follow-up. Apparently, he got her a cheap engagement ring because he didn't want to marry her and thought she was shallow enough that she would dump him over it, but she was just worried he was in debt. I can't remember the ins and outs, but I remember her seeming pretty reasonable about it. Like she just thought it was weird that a man who was normally quite flashy got a really cheap engagement ring.